right, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Resume Reboot, which is part of our Get That Job webinar series here at the Champaign Public Library. My name is Jordan Neal, and I am the career librarian here at the library, so thank you all for joining us. For the latest library news and updates, please visit our website, champaign.org, or you, of course, can follow us on social media if that's an option for you. You can email us at librarian@champaign.org, or you could chat with us just by visiting the homepage of our website. The library is open and we are still offering our curbside services. So again, for more information, please visit our website, or you could just give us a call. Moving on to a couple of Zoom features available to you that might help during this particular webinar. There are some buttons or icons at the bottom of your Zoom screen, depending on your device. On the far left, you have the options that control your sound or your speaker. Moving to the right and within the center of the window includes a chat and raised hand option. You can use these options to ask us any questions or share any comments. Our presenter is happy to pause for any questions throughout the presentation. We invite you to type your question into the chat or raise your hand, and we can unmute you if you prefer to speak and ask your question. And I finally would like to remind everyone that our webinars are recorded, so please be mindful when you share those questions and comments. Finally, I would like to introduce our presenter, Ashley Watkins of Write Step Résumés. As usual, we invite you to read Ashley's entire bio on our website. But in addition to her experience as a corporate recruiter, she's a nationally certified resume writer and online profile expert who partners with job seekers to help with strategies for landing more interviews and finding overall success when it comes to your professional pursuits. I'm so glad that she's joined us today. So with that, Ashley, I will turn it over to you.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here with you guys. So I do have interactive presentations. So if you have questions, I definitely want you to be in that chat. I want you to raise your hand and talk to me, because that helps me decide what information I can give to you and make this a more enjoyable and enjoyable learning experience for you. So yeah, feel free to jump in and ask questions as you have them. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right, let me know if you guys can see the screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. So again, I'm Ashley Watkins. Welcome to Resume Reboot. I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide of creating a powerful resume that will help you land more interviews and hopefully lead you to your dream job. Resumes are really not all that fun. Let's just be honest about it, right? So most times you don't know where to start. You get information from so many different sources, but this is coming from someone who is a recruiter. I look at resumes all day, every day. I write resumes for my clients, and I provide information to job seekers across the globe on how to position themselves better and communicate their value through their resumes. So the purpose of resumes, you have to have some sort of system, and there's pre-work that you have to do before you start to write the resume. So it's not as easy as just opening up that laptop and starting to copy and paste your job description over into your resume. I don't know who else has been guilty of doing that, but I definitely have done it. Put some ones in the chat for people who have, that was your go-to thing. You looked at the information that you had on your job description and you just plopped it over into your resume, and that was it. No other thought really was put to it. Who wants to be honest? Ones if you've done that before, twos if you haven't. Let's see what people are talking about. Good, I'm getting some numbers in. Good. So yeah, like I said, that was what I did. From the beginning, I really just tried to see, okay, this is what my job said that I did. I didn't really have a method to the madness for the resume. But the first thing, if you can remember this acronym, SMART, if you can remember that, the first thing that you have to pay attention to is the strategy. So if you can remember that you need to have a SMART idea about what you need to do with your resume first, it'll help you along the process and make it easier. It'll make it make sense, and you'll understand what people actually want to see, what recruiters want to see, what hiring managers want to see when they're reviewing resumes and matching them to the jobs that they have open. So as far as the strategy, you want to know what's the appropriate way to communicate your message to employers. Some people ask all the time, what type of resume do I need? Do I need a functional resume, which really gives a just a summary of the type of experience that you have. It may point out different competencies and then give a very abbreviated version of your work history toward the bottom of the resume. That's a functional resume where its focus is more on the function of what you did versus where you worked and how long you were there. Most times you see people use a functional resume when they're trying to shift careers. The other type of resume is a chronological resume. So do you need a resume that has your jobs listed out by the date that you held them? So you start with the most recent job first and work your way back. Typically, resumes have about 10 to 15 years worth of experience on them because that's usually enough for the person reading your resume to decide whether or not you have the type of experience that they need. But you want to know the message that you're sending. Do you want to send the message to that to the reader of the resume, who could be that hiring manager or recruiter? Are you sending the message that you're an office administrator, that you're an accountant, that you're good with marketing, that you'll help them with sales? What is it that you want them to know about you or get a feel for when they're looking at your document? So that's the first thing. And that's how you decide what your resume strategy is going to be. And then you decide how you want to market yourself. How will you educate the potential employers about what it is that you do, or what you're capable of or the value that you bring. So are you going to point out the awards that you've had? Are you going to focus on your education because you haven't yet worked practically in the field that you want to branch into? You really want to know, are you going to network to get this job? Will you be applying online? Because all of that will determine what type of resume you use and the format that you need to use for that. I know sometimes I see resumes that have a lot of graphics, a lot of design work to them, and then some resumes are just your black and white structured traditional type resume. So you have to know, how will you distribute this information to the employers? Because if you use a graphic style resume, it may not work well if you're applying online because the information may not translate. It also may not be acceptable for the type of field that you're going into. So again, there are a lot of questions that you have to answer and ask and answer before you can start your resume. Then the A is for action. So, what have you done to set yourself apart from other people? You want to stand out from the crowd. You want them to feel like you're the ideal candidate for the position, that you're the best candidate, for the position, that no one else can do this thing, whatever your thing is, whatever your it factor is, no one else can do that better than you. And that's the way that you want to present your information, in your resume when you're interviewing and all of that. So again, you have to recall those actions that you took. Think about those things that you did at work above and beyond. Think about what you got the pats on the back for. Think about those things, and that will help you decide what action you want to draw attention to. And then you want to think about R. I hate that it's so far down the list, but that's how you spell smart, right? But the reader is really one of the most important things to consider when you're writing your resume, because does the person reading your resume understand what you did? I know I write resumes for people who have jobs that otherwise, if I didn't talk to them or grill them or ask them a lot of questions, I wouldn't understand what they did. I work with doctors, I work with attorneys, I work with office assistants, I work with accountants, I work with people that work in IT. I don't know a lot about those areas. So it is important for you to be able to communicate what you do in a way that no matter who you're talking to, they're able to understand, at least in a general sense, what you do, enough to determine whether or not you're qualified. And then you want to, with the T, tell your story, tell your career story. Make sure that, again, anything that you're including is relevant to what you want to do. So if you want to transition, say you did something 20 years ago, and then you started doing something else, and now you want to start back doing that thing, you've got to be able to tell that story, have them understand that while I did this 20 years ago, I still have kept up with it through my training, my education, and also special projects in my current job, or in my most recent employment history. So again, the SMART strategy for your resume will help you prepare to create a document that entices the employer, that makes them want to interview you, that makes them want to know more, because that's the whole point, right? So I'm going to walk you through an actual client resume, and so you can see how all of that was laid out and the strategy behind what I actually did for them and help them, actually grow in their career. right, so the first thing I want you guys to do is take a resume inventory. So look at your current resume as it stands right now and ask these questions. Does my resume contain strong accomplishments? Again, I'll be honest, my resume did not have strong accomplishments on it because remember, I told you I copied and pasted directly from my job description at work. And that's how I explained what I did every day, right? So there weren't really any accomplishments. I know I run across a lot of job seekers or clients who may say, well, I don't have a lot of accomplishment. I haven't won any awards. Nobody has told me that I've done something well. And I tell you to focus on the things that go wrong if you don't show up to work. Okay, what blows up when you don't show up? Do the phones get answered? Even if you're someone who handles cleaning at your company, maybe you're the janitor or, maybe you work in facilities. What happens when you don't mop that spill up right away? Well, it could be injuries. You can cost the company a whole lot of money because someone got hurt. So now they've got lawsuits, they've got all of these things. So the work that you do, it still impacts your company, no matter how big or small you feel that contribution actually is. So think about the things that you're actually proud of. Don't worry about whether or not your employer has given you a pat on the back for it, whether or not you've gotten an award, whether or not you got a 5 on your performance evaluation instead of a 2 or a 3. Whatever you are proud of and you feel like it's relevant to the job, share those accomplishments on your resume. Again, is your resume specifically targeted? Meaning if you're applying to an accountant job, is somebody looking at your resume going to believe that you have the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities to be an accountant? So it has to be relevant and targeted. Are you using an up-to-date format? There are things that we included on resumes maybe 10, 15 years ago that are no longer necessary in today's market, especially in a virtual sense, right? So in a lot of cases, the format that you use may include, say, an objective statement. Well, objective statements are out of date. You use more of a summary statement or a branding statement. And I'll show you the difference a little later in the workshop. But yeah, you want to make sure that you're using an up-to-date format. Do you have something like references available upon request? Do you have that on your resume? Do you have references, period? Do you have those on your resume? Because that isn't necessary anymore. That's one of the out-of-date components to the resume, that if you have them on there right now, go ahead and take those off because those are no longer necessary. Do you have personal branding elements to your resume, meaning that somebody can read it and find a little bit more out about you other than just your job title, your dates in the company that you worked for, and a little bit about what you did? Do they know who you are, what you stand for, what you're passionate about, what types of problems you solve? Those things help set you apart from other people. So if somebody can look at your resume, and you can read your resume right now and immediately identify who you are, what you do, and how you add value, then you're ahead of most people right now. But that's the art of personal branding is really drawing somebody in to the experience and believing or buying into the fact that you can solve the problem for them. Are you using a one-size-fits-all strategy for your resume, meaning that you've updated it and you have all of the positions that you have your education, your training, and all of that, but you're using the exact same resume to apply for jobs across the board, no matter what they are? That strategy does not work. I know this firsthand because it did not work for me, and it doesn't work for a lot of people who are either applying for jobs that I have open, or people who are coming to me for help because they're not getting callbacks and they know that they're qualified for the positions, but for some reason, the employers are not buying into it. And it could be because you're using a one-size-fits-all strategy. Throughout our careers, a lot of times we can have our hands in several different projects, right? So you may not have just this cookie cutter type position. You have more of a hybrid role where you do multiple things, serving multiple competencies, meaning that you could have that marketing experience, that operations, that IT. You can have all of that, but you want to speak to the audience that finds that information important. So if you're applying to a job that really doesn't care about your IT skills, then you don't need to waste a lot of time or a lot of space on the resume talking about the IT information. So you may want to move some things around a little bit. And then you ask yourself the most important question, last but not least, is it working? Is your resume helping you get interviews? Are those interviews turning into job offers? If the answer is no, then we know that the current resume that you have is not working in its the intent of it is not working for you. And so there may be some rework that you need to do, some tweaking that you need to do to the document. And hopefully today, the information that I share with you will help you get a head start on that.
Ashley, we do have a couple of questions here.
Yeah, sure.
So the first one, I'm going to kind of go backwards here. Someone said, I'm sorry, regarding format, what should we take off our resume if we still have it on there? I missed what you said.
Either if you have an objective statement, an example of an objective statement would be if you say, I am seeking XYZ type of position in whatever, this type of company. The objective statement, the reason why that is outdated and not recommended for resumes now is because it focuses more on you and what you want. Well, we know what you want and we know that that's important, but the employer isn't going to care immediately, right? They're caring about the fact that they have a problem. That problem is that job posting or what the job that they're hiring for, what that job is supposed to do. And they want to know that you can solve the problem that they have right now with that opening. And so if you go into it talking about what you want, it's going to fall on deaf ears. So you don't use an objective statement, you use a summary statement now. And again, I'll give you an example a little later in the workshop about what a summary statement is and the difference between the two. I'll be able to show it to you. The other thing is listing references on your resume. Unless a company specifically asks you to include that information on your resume, you don't need to include it, because we all know there's no reason that you should have to put a statement on there that's a no-brainer, meaning references available upon request. Well, if you want the job, we know that you're going to give us those references if we ask you for them. So don't waste that space on your resume talking about your references when your resume is about you, not the references.
Thank you. And the second one was, Ashley, I would like to learn your opinion on functional resumes for a stay-at-home mom or parent returning to the market. I've heard controversial ideas on functional resumes.
Yes. So just in a general sense, I'm against functional resumes, regardless of whether or not you're returning to the workforce or you're transitioning careers. And here's why. So functional resumes work when you're sending your resume directly to someone. But we know that most people now, because of the way companies have set up their application processes, they use the applicant tracking systems or the ATS or the resume robots or whatever you want to call them these days. But the applicant tracking system, in most cases, they will scan the document and extract information from them, meaning that they parse the information from the resume and load it into a form for you. And that's how the company is actually able to read the resume. Well, if you have a functional resume, the system, computer systems are smart, right? That's why we get it. There's the artificial intelligence, right? But they're not as intelligent as the human. They never will be, in a sense of understanding how we communicate with one another. So in the applicant tracking system, it is trying to assign a set of dates with a position, with the company name, and with the job title, so that it knows what to give you credit for and how to validate the amount of experience that you say that you have. So if the posting is asking for 5 to 7 years of experience, it is looking for that match on your resume, 5 to 7 years of experience. So it could be at minimum 5, but you can have 20 years of experience in that. Well, with a functional resume, you have a list of competencies and things that you may have done or maybe that you've accomplished, but the system doesn't know where to assign that information, doesn't know what date it goes to, when did you do this stuff. Also, as a recruiter, I have those same questions. So when I see a functional resume, it creates more questions than it answers for me, because now I want to know, okay, if you did this accounting stuff or you did this marketing or IT stuff, where did you do it? When did you do it? How many years of experience do you have with it? And now I'm aggravated because there's way too many questions. And anytime you create more work for the person deciding whether or not they want to interview you, that's how you get skipped. That's how you end up in the no pile. So I would say, depending on where you're sending your information to, applying online with a functional resume is probably not the best thing to do because of the applicant tracking system. But sending it to a person, you stand a better chance of them actually reading it and understanding what you did. So that's why I would say I would shy away from the functional resumes and try to use a chronological. It is becoming more widely acceptable now to list stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home parent on your resume. And so if you did things like volunteered, if you had training, or you went to school, or maybe you did homeschooling. I think with the pandemic, everybody has gotten, should have some sort of certificate as a stay-at-home mom. If you volunteered somewhere, if you I don't know, help to coach a little league team, in whatever it is that you did some consulting work or whatever, you can list that in chronological order instead of a functional type order and still get the same result, if not better, from doing that. So I know that was a long answer, but I needed to explain that because there are multiple layers behind that. And I want you to understand why you're hearing that functional resumes are probably not the best way to go.
Thank you, Ashley. That's all we have for now.
No problem. All right. So after you've done your resume inventory, now you have to kind of look at yourself, and you can do these in conjunction. You can do it in a different order, in the reverse order, just as long as you do it. All right. So when you're thinking about yourself, think about your career goals. What types of positions do you want? Think about where you want to be located. Think about those things where you do add value. I know in my experience with recruiting, even though recruiting is about hiring and matching candidates to a specific skill set and presenting them to the hiring team, and hopefully we bring them on board as a new hire. But a lot of the work that I did was supporting the other, not necessarily always lower level, but supporting recruiters who may not have been in the game as long as I have, right? So I was known as the go-to person to help them through their difficult situations with hiring managers, to help them fill their difficult roles that may have been open for a very long time. So that was a reputation that I built for myself. So that was part of my value offerings, that I see things in need and I'm willing to teach people, that I'm willing to train. I'm actually doing it right now, right? And so think about those things that you really enjoy doing, that you're really good at, that people always come to you for, and they say, you know what, you're so good at that. I always come to you for help because of this. Those are your value offerings, no matter how simple you think they may be, because we can go along our daily lives thinking that the work that we do is not important, when really we're making a much bigger impact than we're giving ourselves credit for. Think about where you want to be located. Are you open to relocation? Are you open to a longer commute? Do you want to work from home? There's a position that you want, does it need to offer more work-life balance? Maybe you've traveled for the majority of your career and you decide, I don't want to do that anymore. I just don't. I don't want a job where I have to, work long hours, where I'm on the road all the time and I have very little time with my family. Things change. Then, do you want to work part-time versus full-time? And also, do you want to manage people or not? You can, I work with clients and job seekers all the time who want to grow in their careers, but they don't necessarily want to supervise anyone. I'm like that as well. I like to help people and train people and, maybe be the project lead, but I don't want to be responsible for, specifically managing people and having direct reports, because I feel like I just perform better when I can just worry about myself and what I need to do, and, and helping to support my team and working with cross-functional teams. That's what I enjoy doing. So in knowing that if the position requires you to manage people, then that may be something that you want to shy away from. So when you do that self-inventory, really think about those things that are important to you and make sure that your resume is aligned with those things. So if you want to work from home, which a lot of people are still working from home right now, if that's something that you desire to do, then now your goal is to make sure that you're communicating on your resume the success that you've had working remotely. So were you able to, to use technology in a way that helps your job to become more efficient? Has your communication improved because of something that you've implemented that would benefit you in a virtual environment? So be able to, to let them know that, okay, if I'm working from home, here's my record of productivity. Here are some things that I was able to accomplish. I was able to support a much bigger network of people because I'm working from home. I'm working in a virtual setting. As a recruiter, I'm definitely able to work from home because a lot of the work that I do can either be done via video or via phone. So, when you think about those things, it'll help you decide what to apply for and what to include on your resume, and maybe what you need to let go of now because it's not relevant in the market that we're in right now. All right, so let's jump into some basic resume components. These are the sections or the information that every effective resume should have. So this is a starting point for the resume. So the first thing that you'll have is the heading or your contact information section. And so that will have your name, And your name is usually a lot larger than anything else because you want them, they know nothing else about you. They need to know your name and they need to know how to contact you. So you have to make sure that your contact information is readily available in the heading section of your resume. And then you've got that summary statement. Remember, I said we're not using objective statements anymore. Those are outdated. We're going to use summary statements. And again, you'll get examples of this. Skills and competencies. Can somebody quickly look at your resume and scan that resume and decide whether or not you have the skills and competencies necessary to be effective in the job? So now that I just mentioned the word scan, so recruiters a lot of times get a bad reputation for scanning resumes for, they say 6 seconds, 7 seconds is how long it takes a recruiter to read your resume. Well, that's true. And it's also not true. So the 6 or 7 seconds that it takes someone to decide whether or not you're qualified for the resume, that's the first look. Recruiters, I promise you, recruiters look at your resume a lot longer than 6 or 7 seconds. Okay, I promise you that. It's just the quick scan. You look the same way that you look at if somebody gives you a stack of menus and you're trying to decide what to eat. You quickly go through there real quick and decide which ones you don't want, right? And that's because they don't have the type of food you want. Maybe you don't want Italian tonight. Maybe you don't want tacos or, or whatever tonight, right? And so you can quickly rule those out. Well, that's kind of sort of how the resume reading process works from that initial scan. We know what we're looking for. So we're quickly scanning the document to figure that out. And a lot of times, if your skills and competencies don't align with the role, you can get ruled out pretty quickly. But if we move on with you, by the time we interview you, we almost know your resume by heart. So don't buy into the fact that it only takes 6 seconds and that you've only gotten 6 seconds of somebody's time, because that's just the first initial scan, right? Just a quick scan. Another thing that you want to make sure you have on your resume is your education and certifications. And you can also add training in there, but that can fall under education as well. Then you have your experience section. And then you'll have any volunteer memberships or awards. You want to make sure that you're including that on there, because remember, you're competing against a lot more people and you want to show them that you're standing out from the pack and that you're the final one, the only one that needs to get that job offer. So those are the basic components that you need to have in every resume. So let's sort of jump right in unless you guys have questions. Are we good? How are we feeling with the information? Maybe you can get in the chat if you're good and you're feeling good, you're learning something already. 1's in the chat, and then 2's in the chat if you need me to go back over something. I'd be happy to repeat. All right, good. I'm getting some 1's. Love it, love it, love it. All right, so I talked about the heading, and this is your contact information section. So I'm showing you some before and afters of each section of this particular client's resume. So I had someone come to me. She was looking for a job in fundraising. And so she did a lot of event work, fundraising, and for a nonprofit organization. So the before is what her her resume heading looked like initially. So you see there it has her name, which the name was fine. It's bigger than everything else. Remember, I said that should be the most prominent thing on the page. But it has her address, and then it has a phone number, and it also has the email address, and that's great. But it is not necessary any longer to put your full address on your resume. It's not necessary. As long as you have at least the city, state, zip is cool. You don't even have to really have the zip code on there, as long as you have the city and the state. And that's because there's a lot of scams that happen, and you only want to reveal that information that is absolutely necessary for that employer to have. And that would be your city, state, because they want to, make sure that you're in the appropriate location. All right. And then your phone number. You want to make sure that your phone number is there and that it is correct. I can't tell you how many times I try to reach out to people and they may have some sort of typo in their phone number or their email address, and I can't reach them. okay? Because they may have transposed some numbers, or it's just incorrect because they changed their number and then failed to update their resumes. And then you'll see I did add some color to this person's document, because color is okay. As long as I try to err on the side of safety and stick into the jewel tones. So that would be like your blues, your greens. And if I use something like red, I make sure that I use a darker tone, like a burgundy or a maroon, or, just on the darker tone. So it's not so shocking to the eye. My business colors are red, white, and black, but I would never use the tone of red here that I have here on a resume. I always, if I put that on any documents, I always make sure that I tone it down a bit. Because in resume terms there, you have to, again, consider the audience and consider the types of roles that you're applying to. So you want to keep it as professional as possible. You want it to look appealing, but you don't want it to distract. So this is why I used a more bluish green or aqua, or I'm horrible with colors, but you can see this here with the sort of a bluish green type color. But yeah, you just add more dimension to it. So that's the deal with the heading of your resume. If you have a LinkedIn profile and you want to include that information on your resume, that would be great, because they can find out additional information for you. Because if you're trying to keep your resume to 1 to 2 pages, you may run out of space for some extras and like, well, where do I put this information I want people to know? LinkedIn would be a great place for it, because there are far less restrictions to the amount of space that you use versus a resume. But you want to make sure that you are personalizing your LinkedIn URL, because right now it will have your name and so your first name dash your last name, and then I'll have a bunch of numbers and characters and stuff behind that. Well, that doesn't look so good when you put it on your resume, your cover letter, your business cards, or whatever. So you want to make sure that you are personalizing that. And that's an example below. So for instance, my personalization for LinkedIn is Ashley J. Watkins. So make sure that you're personalizing that for the heading of your resume. All right, so now we're going to look at the experience section of the profile. And this may not be in the exact order that I said everything needs to be on the resume. Again, it depends on your specific situation and what is most important, but I'm going to go through every section. So the experience section for the resume, if you're just looking at it, just glancing at it, you may think, okay, well, nothing's wrong with that. It looks pretty good. But what I would tell you is that it's bullets, bullets, bullets galore. Your job should probably not have more than 5 or 6 bullets for each position. The further back you go, the less amount of bullets you're going to use. So what your position should have, so you can see she's talking about the things that she did. She's got her title. There's some missing information here. Bonus points to anybody that can tell me, based on what I said needs to be there for your job, to explain about your job. I listed 4 different things. There's one thing that is missing here. Can anybody tell me what that is? In the chat, can you see the information that is missing? Yes, Sylvia, yes. The location is missing on the experience section. So for your professional experience, at the minimum, you need to have the name of the company that you worked for, the location in which you worked, the dates, and then your job title. So good, kudos to you for pointing that out. Yes, the location is missing here. Also, any bullets that you use, bullets are reserved for accomplishments, the things that you did above and beyond. You'll have a job description under your document, under your job title and everything. So it looks a little bit like this. Okay, so now you see the difference. This is where I made over the work experience, right? So I have a brief description of what the client was responsible for, right? Explaining the things that she was brought on board to do. What was she hired to do, right? That's an explanation of that. And then the bullets show the results. Now, accomplishments, you'll hear a lot of advice to quantify your achievements or your accomplishments. Well, in some situations, you may not have numbers. You may not have access to that information anymore. Your job just may not be quantifiable. Again, a lot of times in customer service, you may not have numbers to something because maybe you didn't have a budget. Maybe you weren't responsible for sales. but you can quantify by the things that you've improved. So if there was a filing system that was all unorganized and people had a hard time locating the documents that they needed, you went in and fixed that situation and streamlined it to make it easier for people to find things. Guess what? You have quantified that. Quantifying doesn't always mean just the numbers. It means to show proof of your success. Okay, so don't think that the job that you have, well, I don't have numbers. Well, you don't have to always have the numbers to just be able to demonstrate the success. Each of your bullets, because those are things that you have accomplished, they should be in past tense. Okay, because if you accomplish something, it's something that was done in the past. It could still be in your current job, but the description of what you do is in present tense, and the bullets to show what you accomplished would be in past tense. Okay, and again, you see that I added some element of color. So that though, because you add color to the things, or you bold, shade, or put underlines or whatever on things that you want to draw attention to. And it creates a visual interest and helps to guide the reader through, down or across or sideways your page, whichever way you want to send them. So when you're thinking about the accomplishments that you want to list on your resume, you may find it necessary that you bold those accomplishments. So I easily could have said where it says increased income 58%, I could have bolded that if I wanted to draw more attention to it. Okay. But one note that I want to give you about the accomplishments on your resume is make sure that they are front loaded, meaning that you talk about what your results were first, and then you tell how you did that. So here you will see that Judy increased income 58%. She increased the committee membership 14% and volunteer team numbers 33%. And she did that by revamping the revenue streams with those 3 universities or colleges. Okay, that's how she did it. So it's what she did first, which is the outcome, and then how she was able to accomplish that. So if you boosted sales or increased sales for your particular branch or store, then if you have the numbers to show by how much you increased sales or by how much you increased the customer base or increased, brought on new accounts or whatever that is what you list first. And then after that, you tell how you were able to do that. So it could have been by training people, by some marketing campaign you did, or, just whatever that is. You tell the what, and then you tell the how. Okay, is that making sense to everyone? Any questions here before we move on to the other sections?
We did have a question in the chat. They
Okay.
ask, would you recommend that a job seeker create a LinkedIn profile? If you do, may I ask why?
Yes, 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 yes. So there are about 740 million people on LinkedIn right now. A lot of those are employers. They're recruiters, they're hiring managers, there are people who can refer you to job opportunities. That's if that's where the decision makers are playing, then that's where you need to be. You need to be where they are. LinkedIn is also a way for you to do research. You want to research the company, research the team that you may be working with. You can do a lot of things for LinkedIn. It's right there at your fingertips. So I would absolutely say that it's necessary for you to be on LinkedIn, because some companies don't even post their jobs. They go straight to LinkedIn to try to find people. I know that's one of the top places that I go when I have new positions open. I go to LinkedIn, I do a couple searches, see who I'm connected to, see who will come up in my search that I may need to, to connect to on LinkedIn. I'll also go through their profiles to find additional information that may not be on their resume. So I want that holistic view of the candidate that I'm considering for an opportunity, meaning I want to see that cover letter. I want to see the resume. I also want to see their LinkedIn profile. But if you use your LinkedIn profile for nothing else, use it for research. Use it to research the employer, the company, your potential supervisor. Use it to connect with individuals who either do what you do or do what you want to do. And that way you can learn from them and get access to their network. And that way you can be in the know about position opportunities before they're posted. Because a lot of times by the time that position is posted out there for you to see, 70 to 80% of that is already filled. It's just out there because they have to, per their company policy, they have to post those jobs. But we're already, the minute I hear that somebody's going on leave, or somebody's no longer going to be with us, or we're adding some new positions, I'm already sourcing and searching for those people. And LinkedIn is one of the first places that I go, right? So you want to be in those searches. You want to appear in more recruiter searches. So I would absolutely recommend any of you who don't have a LinkedIn profile, get one. It's free. And you have access to tons of information. It is well worth the time that it takes to create that profile, and you can always build upon it. Any other questions?
Thank you, Ashley. None at the moment. We got to thank you for that answer.
Okay, great. All right. And so, so again, I do like to use color, bolding, shadings, and things like that to draw attention to information. But again, if you're struggling when you're doing that self-inventory to think of the things that you've done, just make a list. Make a list of the things that you're good at. When you read the job posting, it will tell you exactly what you have to have. So think about examples that you've done that are similar to what that posting is asking for. And that will give you really a head start on some things that you need to start getting together, gathering information to include that on your resume. Okay. Now, another thing I want to point out is that the beginning of every bullet has to start with an action verb. Okay. Again, aside from it being past tense, it needs to be an action verb. So you'll see increased, surpassed, reversed, grew. And then you want to make sure that the bullets themselves, whatever word you've started it off with, that you don't have 15 bullets starting off with the same thing. So you don't want to say increased, increased, increased. Use your thesaurus. The thesaurus is my best friend. That's how I find out a different way to say a particular word if I've used it over and over again, because those redundancies, they do count against you, because you don't want the person reading your resume to grow bored because everything you have starting off with the same thing. Okay. So make sure that it starts with a strong action verb and it tells what you did and how you did it. Okay. So that is the experience section. All right, so this is the difference between the before and the after. And so you can see the same information is there. It's just that I forced her to dig a little deeper into what she did. So when she says that she developed mission education and volunteer recruitment strategies, okay, then I challenged her. What were some of your recruiting outcomes for volunteers? Do you have any numbers to support the fact that you're good at that? If you oversaw the operations for that particular market and it was over 1.5 million, what were you able to achieve with that? What are some things that you want to draw attention to? If you led the team to an increase in corporate sponsorship, how much of an increase? All right. So this really is the exact same information. It's just once I asked those probing questions, we were able to get a lot more information to show a lot more value. So who would you want to hire if you were looking for someone to do fundraising and be over your national partnerships? Would you hire the before person or would you hire the after person? Who do you think will get the most interviews? And it's going to be the person who took the time to show their results, to point out the information that they did well. Okay, so anybody can have a resume that creates value. Anyone, no matter what you do. I use a couple of lines to explain the scope of your job. What were you hired to do? And then have about 5 or 6 bullets under each of the positions to explain, the things that you accomplished. If you only have 2, if you only have 1 bullet under the position, that's fine. Just make it impactful. Okay, because sometimes you may have just started a job and hadn't had a chance to really make too much of an impact. But if you've done something, you've improved something. Okay, or you contributed to a team who achieved something. If you played a key role on that team, give yourself credit for that. All right, so now this is the other part of her experience. So I do get questions about, well, what happens when I don't have necessarily practical experience? I was only an intern, or, I only volunteered, or I only worked there a very short time. How do I put that information on here? So the things that, again, as Sylvia pointed out earlier, there's no locations here. So we know that those are the issues with the experience section before. Okay. And then there's no achievements. Again, everything is a bullet. We need a description of what you were brought on to do. And then your bullets are just your accomplishments, the things that you did well in that role. And then the dates, you'll notice that they're abbreviated. You want to be consistent with that. So we've got June that's spelled all the way out. We've got January that's abbreviated. We've got August that's abbreviated. You want to be consistent with how you list your dates. So you can use numbers. So if it's February, you can use 2/2021 if you wanted to for the date, but you have to be consistent with what you do. Abbreviations are okay, but you need to be consistent with whatever it is that you do. I prefer to spell everything out because, again, the applicant tracking system is parsing that information and trying to interpret what it sees on the document. So I want to make it plain as day. Okay, but just make sure, however you decide to list those dates, that you're being very consistent with it and you're not switching things around. So you're not using your numbers in one place for the date. So you'll notice like the August, the January, and the June don't have a year assigned to it. Appropriate dates include the month and the year. Now, there may be instances where you worked somewhere, say maybe 15 years, right? And so you would want to, you can use just the years in that case. So again, it didn't even have to be that long ago. If it was 2013 to present, that's okay. But when you apply online, you may have to enter the month to that as well. So you can use just the years, or you can use the month and the year. Again, I prefer the month and the year, whether you use numbers or the words for it, simply because it makes it easier when you apply for positions online. And again, we have listed down here that we're missing the job locations, but we've already addressed that. So that's the difference in what this person's resume looks like before. And then I'm going to show you what I did to the experience section after. So I made a separate section for internships. So somebody reading that can see the professional experience. They also can see the internships or any volunteer opportunities or community involvement and know what they're looking at. So again, if you'll see, it's very consistent. We have the name of the company, the location, we have the dates, which is the month and the year, and then we also have the position that was held. You'll see that I also used another design element, which was putting the position in all caps so that the position title itself stands out more so than the company, because sometimes it's not as important what company you worked for, but what you did at that particular company. Okay, so whatever it is that you want to draw attention to, you can use bolding, shading, caps, capitalizations, or you can use, any underlines and italics. You can use all of that on resumes. Okay, so again, you want to briefly explain your job duties, then take a deeper dive into what you actually accomplished, quantify your achievements. Again, that could be numbers or success. And then use strong action verbs. So you'll see secured $11,000, reduced marketing expenditures 20%, solicited 10 sponsorship packages, doubled membership, recruited 75 new attendees, selected as one of 30. Okay, so each bullet starts with a strong action verb. Okay. All right, so this is the professional summary. Before, this is the before, an example of the before. So a professional summary is a compelling statement about who you are, what you do, and how you add value. Okay, you want to use high impact descriptors. So you want to describe yourself in a way that creates interest. So if it's a position that requires a lot of detail, then maybe you describe yourself as detail oriented. Maybe they need someone who is maybe an out of the box thinker, or someone who does, someone who's a good problem solver, right? So then you may want to say that you're an analytical thinker, or that you're a critical thinker. If you have won awards, then you can say you're an award-winning IT professional or award-winning office manager, whatever the case may be. Use those descriptors. So describe yourself in a way that creates interest. Let your summary statement be no more than 5 lines. You don't need big, huge blocks of text to explain what you do. Try to be as clear and concise as possible. So no more than 5 lines. And when I say 5 lines, I don't mean 5 sentences. So this is 3 lines. That's an example of what I mean. It just needs to be no longer than 5 lines. And then no cookie cutter templates. So if you see something, you Googled it and you see it and you like it, make it your own. Because trust me, if you Googled that and you found it and you thought it was interesting, guess what? Millions of other people have done the same thing. And you are unique. You are not everybody else. You have something unique to offer. You have a unique value proposition. Okay. You offer value in a way that no one else will be able to do, even if they have your same experience. So please, no cookie cutter templates unless you're going to tweak it to fit you, your personality, and your specific job needs. So if we take a look at this professional summary statement, she talked about herself being organized, being driven, uses strategic planning, has excellent customer service, builds positive and mutually beneficial relationships. Again, problem solving, verbal and written communication skills. Okay, these are all great things, but it's all fluff. It's only pointing out the soft skills. Soft skills are things, are those attributes or those qualities that you need to have to, ideally, you want to have good communication skills. You want to be able to work in teams. You want to be organized, and all those things that they'll have on the job posting. But again, what does that mean? If you talk about that you're a team player, that may sound all good, but it doesn't really tell the employer anything. If you're, what do you mean you're a good team player? What are you influencing that team to do? Are you able to rally the team together to achieve business goals? That's much different than you saying that you're a team player, because, and I jokingly work with job seekers and stuff and tell them, like, listen, gang members are team players. They may not play the kind of games that you want to play, but they're team players. So what differentiates you from somebody who may be, forming a team to do something crazy or wild or something that you would never participate in, right? So be specific about the value that you offer, not that you just work in teams. Okay. Don't even stop at the fact that, you pay attention to detail. Okay. So do criminals. That's how they know how to scam you, because they pay attention to those fine details. So be specific about the things that you want to do, or that you're able to do for people, and show that value. So, are you able to, break into new markets that were untapped before? Are you able to increase diversity where there was none before? Are you able to get customers excited about different events? Are you able to organize the work in a way that makes everybody's job easier, where you improve productivity? Be specific about the outcomes that you have, instead of using descriptors that could be categorized with something else. Okay. So here's the example of the professional summary that I helped the client create after the fact. So you'll see that we pointed out some of the specific competencies at the top, which would be event leadership, fundraising, and community engagement. But we talked about this person working for a nonprofit organization, right? And so what is nonprofit organizations? What are most of them about? The mission, they're about goals, they're about the community, they're about making an impact, making a difference. So we did want to make sure that they knew that this person was mission focused, a mission-focused fundraising professional. And then we talk about the years of experience. Again, most people want to lead with the years of experience, but not really showing any impact with that. I know several people who have been doing things for a very long time, but that doesn't mean that you're good at it, which is why I recommend that if you have anything on your resume, especially at the beginning of your resume, if you're trying to avoid things like ageism, and that you don't want people discriminated against you because you're too old or because you're too young, air quotes, because there's no such thing, right? Then you don't want to lead with your years of experience. In this case, it was necessary to show that she had 7 years of experience, because that was a specific requirement of the job. But otherwise, if she had 25 years of experience or 30 years of experience, just hearing that. I was 22 when I started recruiting. All right. So when I came across somebody's resume and I looked and I saw that they may have worked somewhere, and I probably was in kindergarten at the time, of course, I thought that person was old as dirt, but they may not have been. They may have just started working early. I started working pretty late in the game. So, I only had a few years of experience, but some of my peers, already had 5 years of experience, because they started fresh out of school, working in the field that I worked in. So there are different perceptions assigned to the amount of experience that you have. So focus on the value that you bring versus the years that you've done it. Okay, but this is just an example. It was a requirement. She's very green to the scene and had a lot of internship experience, but we were trying to convince or influence the employer to give her credit for that number of years of experience. So we wanted to point that out. But again, we're talking about driving year over year donation increases. We're talking about cultivating relationships with stakeholders and also with staff so that they can achieve their organizational or their revenue goals. And then also saying that she has a personal commitment to improving donor relations. Okay, building strong teams and impacting others' lives. Okay, so you see how that's much different than the feel of what she had before, which was very vague. Again, we're saying the same thing that she wanted to communicate, but we're driving it home a lot further. Okay, so again, I write this section of the resume, I write it last because now I've gone through the experience. I know everything that the value that's there. So now I can craft a statement that ties it all together. Okay, but you can write this first. You can write it last. You can bounce around and write your resume in whichever format, whichever section you want to start with, whichever's easiest for you. There's no rule that you have to start from the top of your resume and write it down to the bottom. Go with where where your brain flows, with where your writing is leading you. Review your notes and bullets in your resume. And think of what the common theme is. Again, if your common theme is that you create processes that help to make things easier for other people, again, that's a theme that's part of your brand. So you may want to reiterate that in your professional summary. Okay. You also want to focus on keywords. So a lot of the keywords for this type of position that this fundraising professional was targeting was event leadership, fundraising, community engagement. So make sure that those words are present in your statement. So again, we've got donor relations there. We have relationship building. We also have community support. We have fund development. Those are all keywords necessary for the job, meaning that the keywords, you can find them in the job posting. All through the job posting, it talks about the competencies or the type of work that you will be expected to do in that particular position. So you want to make sure that you mirror those keywords if they're true. If you have that experience, you want to mirror that language in your document. So that's what I mean when I say you need to put keywords in your resume. Okay, any questions about this section or anything else?
No questions at this point.
Okay, all right, good. All right, so we will keep it moving. All right, so now we'll talk about the education section and the skills and competencies. So as far as the education section, we have here, again, we want to label it as education because that's the section header. We want to always have that and be consistent. So we have the name of the school, you need the location of the school, the degree you have, and you can put the year that you completed it as long as it's a recent degree. If somebody can determine your age by your degree year, leave it off. It's okay to do that. Especially, I don't know what it is about the mind, but when you read something that starts with 2000, it could be the year 2000, but seeing 1999 or 19 anything written on a document, it makes it seem a whole lot older than what it is, or further back than what it has to be. Because in my mind, it's hard for me to think that I may have graduated high school more than 20 years ago, right? So when I see that on paper, it looks completely different than if I, said that I graduated college in 2002. Right? It just sounds different. And so it's a way that people try to guesstimate your age. So they figure, all right, if you graduated, college at this particular age, I can just do some deductive reasoning and figure out how old you are. So again, try not to include the dates unless it's on an employment application. A lot of times you can't avoid that, but for the resume purposes, if you have a degree that's a little further back, especially one that's more than 10 years old, then you want to take the dates off. All right. Make sure that if you have a major or a minor, include that information. Okay. Now, everybody doesn't have a degree. So what do you do in that situation? If you attended college at all, you can put the years that you attended college, meaning that if you have 3 years of college, you can put it there. Or if you have a certain number of credit hours that you've obtained, you can list it that way. So you can say, 40 credit hours towards a Bachelor of Science in Communications. And that's perfectly okay. In that section, if you haven't gone to college at all, then you can list your training in that section. If you haven't done any training, again, this is where LinkedIn comes in. Hop over to LinkedIn. They have free training on there for almost any field that you can think of. Type in your target field and take a training. Take the free training. Sometimes they're 30 minutes, they may be an hour, it may be a 6-hour course, and you get a certificate and everything for it. Take the training, and that way you can list it on your resume. This is especially helpful for someone who does not have education in their desired field and they're trying to change careers. I've worked with clients who are switching from being a teacher and then they want to become a nurse. So we have to focus a lot not more heavily on their education or their training versus their practical experience because it just isn't there yet. Okay. Any questions about how to position your education or how to list things in your education section? Okay, so I get questions too about the position of your education. Should it be at the top? Should it be at the bottom? And really the answer is it depends. So education at the top of the resume means that you're either entry level or you don't have much experience in your field yet, and you want them to see that information quickly. Because you don't want them looking at all of your stuff on the resume and saying, okay, she doesn't have any experience in this area. What's going on here, and not worry about reading further. Okay, so you want to catch that attention, immediately. So you put your education at the top. Now, if you have experience in the area and you're easily, backing that up. So I have a degree in HR. I also have 15 plus years of recruiting and HR experience. It's not necessary for me to put my education at the top at this point. Okay. But when I was trying to get into HR, that education was smack dab at the top of my resume because I did not want them to miss it. Okay. So that's how you figure out whether or not your education goes at the top or it goes at the bottom. How much experience do you have relevant to the job target? Okay. Then you've got the skills and competencies section. So these are key skills that you have to have in order to be qualified for the position. You find those words in the job posting, or you can do a quick search for some positions that are similar to what you're targeting and see what they're asking for. Look at the common theme there. If they're looking for, say maybe these same 10, 15 things, then you may want to include that information, or that you should include that information on your document. Also point out your software knowledge. So right now I'm looking for some people who have experience with a program called SAP. If they don't have SAP experience, a lot of times my hiring supervisors don't want to talk to them. So it would help me out a whole lot if I knew, reviewing the resume, that this person had the particular software knowledge that we're looking for. It's on the posting, but not very many people follow through and add that information to their document. Again, I use some borders, I use shading, and I also use color to draw attention to certain things in the skills and competency section, as well as the education section, because I want them to have no doubt whatsoever that this person has a degree and has a relevant degree to the position. So that's why I made sure I bolded it, and I also added color to it as well. So again, use keywords from the job posting. Make sure that you're spelling things correctly too, especially those computer skills, because if you're saying that you have experience in things, pay attention to, just do a quick Google scan just to make sure that if it has a camel case, is it something capitalized? Is it one word or two words? Make sure that you're looking that up, because you want that to be accurate on the resume. Okay, but list all of those things. It's all of the skills that you have. You don't have to, like I listed Microsoft Office here, and I listed out all of the systems that she has within Microsoft Office. That's not always necessary. Depends on the type of job that you're applying to and whether or not the posting is asking for it. And in this particular case, it was. All right, and so here is the actual resume sample. I'm not expecting you to be able to read this word for word right here because it could be a little small. This sample is on my website at writesteprésumés.com if you want to take a look later. Okay, but this is what the resume looked as a whole. So you see what I mean by using color and borders and shading. Certain things are standing out, right? It's drawing attention to the most important information. All the section headers are consistent. The fonts are consistent. The color is consistent. And this is a very simple layout that you really don't need any design experience to create, because I'm not a designer. I'm not really even that good, when it comes to, computers. I know the basics. I know how to get around. I just, and so I'm not a design expert with Photoshop or, or anything like that. Just a very simple format with borders, shading, and things like that can draw attention to a lot of information and make your document look really, really nice and streamlined. Any questions about this document?
We do have a question in the chat. Do you suggest to have a one-page resume or 2 pages?
All right. So, yep, I get this question a lot too. Your resume should be anywhere from 1 to 3 pages, depending on the type of experience you have and the role that you're targeting. Most times when I write resumes for people, they're going to have a 2-page resume, especially someone with more than 5 years of experience. But if you've done the same type of work for the majority of your career, or you've held your current job for quite some time, maybe you've had that job for 10 plus years, you may have a 1-page resume. So your resume needs to be as long as it has to be to communicate your value. Okay, so there's no wrong or right length. It's just a standard length is usually 1 to 2 pages. So the fact that, people saying you have to have a 1-page resume, there's no other way around it, that is a myth. And actually, if you're forcing your information onto 1 page, you could be doing more harm than good, because as a recruiter, my job is to give a summary of your experience as I advocate for you to my hiring team so that they can interview you. If you're already giving me the Cliff Notes version of what you've done, I don't have enough information to work with. I don't have enough to go on to ask you those probing questions so I can get more information from the team, because your resume does lead that conversation. So just be mindful of that. If your resume ends up being 2 pages, so be it. If it ends up being 3 pages and you're going for upper level leadership opportunities, let it be. As long as the information you're including shows your value and is relevant to the job target. That's all that matters. So 1 page is okay, 2 pages is okay. There are times that you have a CV, which is a more comprehensive document that includes so much information about what you do. Sometimes they could be 20, 30 pages, depending on, how many publications the person has done, the types of workshops or projects that they've done. Maybe they've done presentations. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there, but just your standard type resume, it's going to be 1 to, like I said, 1 to 2 is basically the standard, but you can have up to 3. And then when you're looking at federal resumes, those don't have page limitations either. So CVs and federal resumes are a little bit different. And so they can be much, much longer. But for your standard resume, as long as you're in that frame of 1 to 2 pages, you're good. 3 pages if you're going for, again, an executive or senior level position. I hope that helped. Any other questions?
No questions at this time.
All right, good. So the final thoughts. So just because you're struggling to even figure out where to start with your resume, that does not make you a bad employee. It does not make you, unemployable. A lot of smart people, a lot of professional people who have great experience, who have tons of value, struggle to find the jobs that they want, even when they're qualified for them. And it's just because they struggle trying to, communicate their value in a way that's meaningful to their audience. So a big key to, just to landing your job is having that effective resume strategy. So again, do the work, do the homework, figure out what it is that you truly want. Do the inventory of yourself, of your career, to see how you align to this position. You are your own best advocate. So how would you argue with somebody who told you that you weren't qualified? What would you say to convince them otherwise? How would you show them that you are valuable? So if those things are present on your resume, then you've done a good job. Keep a positive attitude, connect with people. Again, the people who do what you do what you want to do. Have them vouch for you. So take it a step further. Don't just apply online and stop it at that. You have about a 1 to 2% chance of getting a job if you do it that way. Again, you heard that right. You have about a 1 to 2% chance of getting a job if you're applying online and doing nothing else, because it's far too competitive. If you think about that, right? So 200 people apply to the same opportunity, only one person can get the job. So your chance of getting that job is 1 out of 200. If that's all you do, if you're good with those odds, go ahead and play that game. But I would suggest that you access something like LinkedIn, you access associations, you go to your library, your local library, attend events like this so that you can be in contact with people who can influence decision makers. Okay, because if I know Sarah, and I also know Michelle, they both work for the same company that I want to work for. They can vouch for me, and I stand a better chance of getting an interview just off of the strength of the relationship that they already have with that employer. I've applied online, but I've also connected with Michelle and Sarah because they can put a word in for me. You don't have to know somebody personally to do that. That's the beauty of LinkedIn. You connect with people, you engage with them, you share information, and people are more likely to give you information when you need it. Keep a positive attitude, stay organized and persistent, and you'll land your dream job in no time. Okay. Any other questions? I'm here for you. I'm so excited that you came to spend this time with me today. So excited. I hope you found this information helpful. I can stick around for a few if you have some questions. Leave them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we can go for it.
Great. Well, thank you, Ashley. That was wonderful.
You're welcome.
As Ashley mentioned, feel free to type your questions into the chat, or you could raise your hand if you'd prefer to speak. Sometimes it's easier to say your question as opposed to typing it into that chat. So let us know. I'm going to go ahead and share my contact information. So if you need any further information, or you want me to relay any thanks or anything to Ashley, here's my contact information. Here at the library, we are also offering career services. As Ashley mentioned, you can come to your local library. We are helping with resumes and cover letters. We've been helping with practice interviews recently. So please email me, give me a call. We can meet here at the library or virtually, whatever you're comfortable with, and we can just start off with introductions. We don't have to jump into any professional projects at the moment. Let's see here, make sure I'm not missing anything in the chat. So our next career webinar will be Wednesday, June 16th at 2 p.m. and that will be a continuation of our Ask an Employer series. We'll be hosting Karen Rickley from Carl Human Resources, who will share some of her experiences and insights by working as a talent acquisition partner at Carl. Here at the library, again, just as Ashley mentioned, we're trying to make those connections. We had a job fair recently, well, a job fair last year, I can't believe it, where we had people kind of network and then have discussions, and they got jobs just because they were having those conversations and showing their face and things like that. And then here's the remainder of our June webinar series, but we have a lot more webinars coming up for the rest of the summer, and not just career services, but for our tech series, our business series, our crafty adults, and our writers workshop. So please visit champaign.org/events for more information. I'll start my video. We do have a question here in the chat. Is there anything wrong when the job I applied to, but if the employer thinks I'm overqualified?
Yeah, so a lot of times when employers think you're overqualified is because you are. And so if a quick way for you to decide on your end whether or not you're overqualified is if you check every single box for everything that they're asking for on the posting, you're probably overqualified for it. You have to give yourself some bit of learning curve. So if there are things, I usually say, if you can remember this, the 80-20 rule. If you can do 80% of the job already, 20% of it, you don't even know where to start. You've heard of it, but if somebody left you to your own devices, you could not figure it out. That's your learning curve. So that's how you know a position is going to possibly offer some growth for you. It's because you have some areas where you're not familiar with it. If you're reading every bullet of the posting and you've done it, yep, done that, do that now, do that now, do that now. You get to the experience section, you've done every single thing and more, you're overqualified. Okay. There could be some instances where the job is asking for a bachelor's degree, you have a master's, or they may be asking for 5 years, you have 7 or 10 or whatever, then you are actually overqualified. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's probably, a message to you that you need to shoot for more, that you have more value than you think you have. Because again, we judge ourselves a lot harder than the employers do, because I could look at somebody's resume and think like, oh yeah, I got to call this person, but they're sitting at home thinking, man, they're not going to call me because I don't have the right experience. I don't have this, I don't have that. You worry about everything that you don't have. You go right into this whole spiral of why you shouldn't be called when you know you want to be called. So again, that energy, channel that into, oh, this is an opportunity for me to grow. This is an opportunity for me to make an impact. And now you flip your thinking, and positive thoughts breed positive outcomes. That's the biggest lesson that I've learned throughout my career. Okay. How you view yourself. Again, if you keep seeing this repeatedly, everybody can't tell the same lie. You need to start shooting for more, make more money, go for the manager opportunity if the associate or specialist is telling you that you're overqualified. So that's the best advice I can give you. Look, if you're checking every box, go for the manager position, go for the upper position, or find something that provides that learning curve for you. But the 80-20 rule, 80% of what you can do, and you can even go down to 75, 80%, 20% is the learning curve.
Well, great. Any more questions for Ashley? I don't see any here. Well, once again, thank you, Ashley. That was great. We're so happy that you could visit with us today and share all of your wonderful experiences and insights. I don't see any further questions in the chat, so I think I'll go ahead and end the webinar. I hope everyone enjoys their afternoon, and thank you again for joining us today.
Great.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.